Hey, what's up, nerdies? English Dave here with my co host Andrew, and we're here to talk about Shogun. Today, we're going to talk about why you should be watching this show. No spoilers in this entire podcast, but if you want a quick TLDR of it, Andrew, should people be watching the show and why?
I think this is one of the best deep dives into a culture. I'm not understating it to say that every scene actually has weight. They even said the subtitles went through like 9 steps of translation, I think, just to make sure that they were conveying the right, terminology and emotion with everything. The storyline itself, it's a must-see if you ask me.
I'm not usually a person that watches dramas a lot, but this is one of the few dramas that I'm into, and it has the scale and scope of sci-fi and fantasy, and I love it. Watch it, go check it out. And if you're still interested in our spoiler-free thoughts, keep listening. Again, there will be no spoilers in this entire podcast. The FX series, based on James Clavell's best-selling novel, is set in Japan, or I should say like the show, in the Japans, I love how they pronounce it. Japan's. It's set in Japan in the year 1600, at the dawn of a century-defining civil war. Lord Yoshi Toranaga is fighting for his life as his enemies on the Council of Regents unite against him when a mysterious European ship is found marooned in a nearby fishing village. And that's kind of like the catalyst of the story, so it's not really a spoiler. Literally, the opening scene sets all this up, and that's the setup for a lot of, at first, cultural clash. What I like about this show is that it plays with the whole foreigner in a foreign land aspect, and you almost think, is it playing with the white savior narrative that we've seen a lot in these kind of stories? But it subverts it. What do you think of the cultural clash that this show presents?
Oh, I love it. I took a class in college. It was Japanese literature, talking all about their history. So honestly, when I saw this show, I just love the fact that I could kind of see what I've been reading about, I guess, for time. And honestly, credit to the filmmakers, the set designers, all of them. I think the execution is really what drives it for me. I don't want to say it's not revolutionary. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But the whole point is I'm able to escape into their world, right? It looks good, it sounds good, it feels good, and I'm enthralled, right? With every single scene, I'm literally there, like he stood up. Like the simplest things can actually drive, discussion in here. And I just, yeah, like I said, I think I said it earlier. The weight of every scene, it really comes through, and it just looks fantastic.
The production of the show, like you said, the set design, the costume design. You mentioned earlier that they put a lot of effort into the translations. There's multiple levels of translations, and part of that translation is also having someone who's a cultural advisor, because it's not just translating how people speak, it's translating how people moved. Their movements, their body language, their hand movements, how they bowed, things like that. Yes, you still have some of those cultural things in Japan today, but historically, there's a lot of things that have changed and evolved since then. So it has to be not just location accurate, but period accurate. And I think this show does a good job of showing, a lot of shows like this that show a stranger in a strange land narrative. It's always about, hey, that's different. Hey, that's different. The character's constantly pointing things out that are different, but this does it in a subtle way. I won't go into details, but there's a moment in one of the episodes when a character pushes their hand through something, and that's such a great moment of cultural difference. You're like, oh, that makes so much sense that they wouldn't know, things. So it's not necessarily the obvious things, or just things that might make us in the modern Western world feel uncomfortable. That wasn't necessarily seen as the same way to them, because the world is very different for them. We live with luxuries by comparison. We're very privileged in our, not just in our time that we live in compared to then. And I think, and even showing things like how much more advanced that part of the world was than Europe. By comparison, you're realizing that, from their architecture to their fashion, just how they carried themselves. Europeans thought they were going to meet savages, and you realize, no, you're the savages,
Yeah,
actually.
exactly.
And I thought that
But I
was really,
love that though.
and I love that was really well done. And which takes me to our next point of discussion. I want to discuss. I think this is also part of the cultural clash. the political intrigue in this show? What do you think of the politics, the people, how players move, and things like that?
So fantastic. Yeah. Piggybacking off with what you said, the cultural clash, I guess, leads into the political clash, and part of what I kind of jotted down as a theme of the show is a clash of cultures and barriers. Like I think that's what's nice about the show. There's a language clash, there's a religion clash, not to say more on that, and there's also traditional clash, right? And like you said, I'm like, okay, well, these guys aren't savages. Oh, wow, oh, you're here. Oh, wait, these people are here. So it becomes a thing of like um opening Pandora's box. Like how deep does it go? You're now wondering like what is the depth of the culture here? Like is it just on the surface level? Like how deep have they been, westernized, if you say, or like what are the extents that they've gotten their tendrils and roots into this Japanese culture? And that's what I kind of really enjoyed seeing over the course of each episode, because you're right, there are some stark moments where you can see like this is how we do things, this is how you do things, stop it, right? And then the other times where you start to see just like a little bit of a blend of the culture and things coming together. Especially, I think I really like seeing Blackthorn, because I guess we can closely relate to him in just being like when he's watching them speaking and he doesn't know, like he really portrays the, will I say, confusion or despair really well. Like he's just watching, like I really hope this person is translating correctly, because it's already hard enough for me to sell what I'm selling. I can't even like say it myself. So that's like another layer to the the clashes. It's not just like a different culture. I also can actually hear you talk about it like the way you would, right? Like somebody else is saying this for me here, like as my translator. I also hope they're translating correctly, because again, that's the theme of the show. The efficacy, right, or the accuracy of the translation also kind of fuel some fires or alleviate some other situations. Like I really love it, and from what I read, like it was similar in the shooting of the show, right? Like even on set, there were some of these translations going between the Japanese speaking crew members and the English speaking crew members. So I just find it interesting. It's almost like it went out, it like broke the fourth wall, right?
Uh-huh,
Like like the whole point of these clashes and cultures just somehow finding a way to synergize. Because again, the more you watch the show, the more you see that what, you can make it actually without actually speaking a language in a place, right? Because I mean, you see him doing it. You see people in different ways. Again, not saying who or what. You see people start to meld the fact that they don't speak the same language, but they're moving towards the same goals.
uh-huh,
So I really enjoyed that, and even the political aspect as well. It just all ties into the same idea of you versus you versus you, but like who is for who?
uh-huh,
Like I said that exactly as I thought it. Like everybody seems like they're planting seeds of doubts,
uh-huh,
right? Every single person for various reasons. Even the good people, just like every conversation has a meaning. So I really liked about the show. I meant like the dialogue also portrays like I guess the political weights, and like the intensity of every action can really be portrayed just by the way these people act, and like make you feel like no, like our lives aren't our own. Like there's a system here, and I can die if I say the wrong thing. They just made the tension of the culture and the political atmosphere just mix in with the, like I said, the language barrier, and then this inflow of what is coming for those who haven't seen it.
Yeah, no, I think that there's so many layers to the politics that make this work. Before we even get into the outsiders, internally, this is the
Uh-huh.
time, this is feudal
Mhm.
Japan. Without going into details,
Okay.
this is a time, it's called feudal Japan for a reason, right? There's a lot of
Yep.
infighting. There's a lot of things that happen internally that they were shutting down certain outside connections, and
Mhm.
only specific people. In
Wow.
this instance, the Portuguese had connections for trade and things like that. And how does that, like you said,
Okay.
how does that manifest itself through the various language and religious barriers,
That's like,
right? That kind of
yeah.
play into it. And I love that, because it's like while you're fighting each other, you have to also deal with outsiders on various levels.
Outsiders. Yeah.
And how does that
Yeah.
affect you? Bringing in outsiders, bringing in their ways, good and bad things, not necessarily all bad things
Okay.
that you might see as good and
Okay.
bad. And how does that change things? And how did that change your world? Learning from them. And what do you decide
Uh,
to learn? What do you decide to learn? And what do you decide to keep
right.
away?
Exactly.
And things like that. And how does that create any sort of generational shifts? Because like you said, once you've opened that box, you can't put it back in. you know, because what you've been told is real as the insider, and now as the outsider, you realize maybe there's more nuance to that.
Mm.
And
I love that.
I do love that. I think they've done a very good job balancing that. And I think through the characters'
So
journeys, you understand why they make certain political decisions because just because
that
a
okay,
character
okay,
chose path A at the beginning doesn't mean they don't change their mind later.
yeah, and that's fair, right? That's allowed.
And
Like,
you mentioned, briefly in terms of characters, and we'll go into that in a bit. I think what the show does a good job. Yes, you have the key characters of the show, and the characters that are obvious. But I think even the supporting characters, as you get to know them, you understand
yeah,
why they make their decisions. It's not good guy, bad guy
I think
situation. And
okay.
I think I like that. So what do you think of the characters that we've seen so far?
I'll just say, yeah. Again, I'm really like walking around any spoiler territory because you also want people to actually experience it yourself. Because I think we're also, I don't know, some people may have read the book, some people may have seen the original production years ago, right? But for those of us which kind of like me haven't, it's also nice to just like in the drama sense, let every character be, right? Let yourself actually watch them, like you said, and feel how you feel about them at first, and then at the end be like, you know what, I still kind of see why they did that, like. Yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, maybe like maybe I don't want to do seppuku. Like the culture, like you said, back then in feudal Japan was very different, and they had some very very strict traditions. But I feel like this whole globalization thing just started to raise the questions of like why a little bit, like oh, why do we do that? Or like yeah, wait, why can't we do that? Like oh wait, there are other people doing that. Like oh, and it's just it's very interesting to see, like you said, with the side characters, even more so than some of the main character. I don't think there's a character I saw that I didn't enjoy. Even some of the background characters, right? Like it's not even a spoiler because you hear it later in the episode, but some lady who mentioned something about sake, right? More sake, less sake. Just a little like quirky thing. Like even that like had a purpose and had a point, right? And like you just feel the essence of, like I said, it really is like an escapism thing for me, right? Like I feel like their world is real. I can be a nitpicky show watcher sometimes, like even if like sometimes you see like a set and you see like a Chick-fil-A box in the corner, not that badly, but the idea of like it's easy for my mind to find something to like leave their world with, but like you don't feel that here. Each character, sub characters, main characters, they all just you feel like they feel the weight of this world and this air of the shogunism and the feudalness and like just being the samurai hierarchy. It just felt like, yeah, if you weren't at the top, you really were at the bottom. I don't know if there was any in between. And just another shout out for Fuji-sama. I think that's all I'll say. She grew on me in that beginning and what and what I saw. So yeah, nothing more there. But just other than that, every character for however long we see them, because you don't know, everybody, even if it was for 10 seconds, they pulled their
No,
weight.
it's true. There's even a character in one of the most recent episodes that is set up as a character that you hate. Like, annoying. And then
Really?
in the next episode, you're like,
Just
damn, I believe in you. The honor, the honor, I'm with you.
exactly,
And yeah, it does a
exactly.
great job of that. I think, like you mentioned, and we touched upon this in production, but I want to go further on it. Outside of the costume and set design, I think overall it just looks beautiful. The show looks amazing. Like you said, there's an authenticity to it. From a even when they where they use visual effects, like computer effects, it looks good. There's certain shows that
Yeah,
I won't mention. I don't want to compare shows, but I was watching this show and I was like, this is what the set design on that other show should look like. Like
yeah,
the other one looks
yeah.
like green screen rooms. And of course, this probably uses green screen to extend the backgrounds, but there's a tangibleness to it. It feels like you said, you can feel like I can go there. I can transport myself there and I can be there. And that's why I said it at the top of the podcast, even though it's not fantasy or sci-fi, it has that feel at scale. I was asking
So like
somebody,
it is, yeah.
what show has that kind of scale that isn't sci-fi or fantasy in the modern era? People compare this to Game of Thrones, but Game of Thrones is fantasy. you know, so it's like it's
Yeah.
very rare that we get in a TV show at least where we get these kind of big historical dramas.
Honestly, the closest, just to cut you off, in my mind was Succession,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not even the same kind, but the next like drama show where it's just like the weight of people feel weighty. I think Succession, and I'm not even comparing either
Yeah,
per
yeah,
se,
yeah.
but
I hear what you're
they
saying.
definitely have that same sense of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what also sets it makes you think like, wow, why haven't we had shows on this kind of scale in terms of historical
Cinematography.
dramas, you know. And as much as it is a drama, when it gets to the action, oof, I hope you're not squeamish, because
Yo, yeah.
wow, you know, I think, and I
Yeah.
wanted to go into that in
They
terms of the pacing. You know, what did you think of the pacing?
don't don't I have to say it's excellent? I have to feel like it's excellent just because um it feels very intentional. Feels very intentional and um kind of like a graph, like another logarithmic graph, kind of like, things are ramping up, but like by the time it gets to the top, it's not like a ramp up like this, it's a ramp up like it's, it's when we're going to the moon. Because when you're right, when it's bloody, it's not like it's not a little bit harsh. So I think they did a good job again of slowly peeling back the layers of what's going on in this feudal society of this era. I believe it's a Sengoku era. Don't quote me if
It
I'm
is.
wrong, but I believe so. Good,
You're
okay.
correct.
And just seeing the yeah, just seeing how things how a little what is the butterfly effect, right? Like how a
Yeah.
butterfly can cause like domino effect. Like just really seeing how a conversation can actually lead to
Eh.
blood, right? I think they do a good job of showing us that progression, right? It never kind of feels like, oh, where did that come from? It's always like, oh wow, okay, he decided that, right? So I think again, credit to the showmakers and everyone because I too don't often get overlooked by drama. I don't know if you ever saw Black Sails, actually.
I did
It wasn't
actually,
like
yeah.
the most talked about show because I do get I get like elements of all that, which is again credit to this show. 'Cause I think Black Sails was a very good show for those who enjoyed it. I did mostly at the beginning, shaky at the end, but side story. And I think just in a similar way, they know how to keep us hooked and even like even like shows that I know I like a show when they like zoom in on like a character reading a page and I pause it. Okay, what is he reading? What's in that book, right? Like I don't really need to, but like some shows I don't care. I'm like I literally don't care about the detail. Whereas here I'm like, okay, whose name is there? Who's that there? So again, I think credit to them on the side character building, the world building, and the pacing of the meld of both, right?
You know, it's funny that you talk about that. Before I close, I kind of want to bring that up. In terms of the detail that's put into it, that detail, oh, a lot of the detail is there, but it isn't explained to you explicitly, but it makes you want to learn. You know, like I find myself Googling things. Like, what does this mean? Ooh, what does this mean? Why
Yeah,
why are their hairstyles like that? Why are they wearing these clothes? Why, you know?
that was my wife with the middle part. She's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what is it?
But it doesn't like explicitly like spoon feed it to you and like this means this, this means this, you know. You have to figure it out yourself. And I find myself learning a lot of things like you mentioned, you know, the Sengoku era, you know, and like I'm like, ooh, I want to learn about that era. What else is there? You know, what else happened? You know, so it
Yeah,
actually teaches you in a way and pushes you to kind of be educated. So it's not just entertainment for entertainment's sake. You feel like you're learning
yeah,
something about that time and era, you know, and I really appreciate that. I think that's one of my favorite
same.
parts of the show. Okay, I think that's it for our spoiler-free talk. I want to say so much, and I wish we had the bandwidth to do an episodic review of every episode, but unfortunately, we don't have that kind of time. But those of you who've watched the show and are caught up to the show, and which is going to be 10 episodes, so we will be doing a spoiler-filled discussions that will be full of spoilers. So you have time to catch up if you haven't caught up, and if you've never watched the show, again, this is our us telling you watch this show. It is fantastic. I see it. It's going to be getting a lot of Emmy nominations in the next award seasons for sure, for sure, for sure. And on that note, thank you, Andrew, for being here with me.
My pleasure.
My name's English Dave, and this has been a Nerdy Bunch spoiler-free discussion on why you should be watching Shogun, which is currently airing right now on Disney Plus and Hulu. And as always, Andrew,
Keep it nerdy.
peace.